in terms of like the sector as a whole, just for AI, why is it so important to decentralize it?
We're always halfway joking that the kind of centralized AI is actually closed AI. So the ironic part is that OpenAI is closed AI. Because you don't know where the data came from, who made the censorship decisions, what are the weights and biases of that particular model. You have zero visibility into that. So it's completely closed. And you're putting all of your trust into a handful of entities. And if these models and eventually agents coming from these models are going to run big parts of commerce, do we feel comfortable putting all of, most of commerce into the hands of a few companies?
Today's guest is Michael Heinrich, the co-founder of Zero Gravity Labs, or literally a Zero G Labs. I call it OG Labs, but I think I'm wrong when I say that. Zero Gravity Labs is a core contributor building a decentralized AI operating system, which we will dive into what that means in a little bit. It has over 200 investors across its 40 million seed round and its 35 million pre-seed round, which, throwback, I actually covered when I was a reporter at TechCrunch back in March of 2024. I'm excited to have Michael on the show to talk about how things have been since then and all things about AI. Michael, welcome to the show.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me. Really great to reconnect. I was just reflecting that it's been less than a year, but it feels like many years.
Oh my gosh, I know. Because when I was like, I know this company, I'm going to have Michael on. When did I write that article? And I looked it up and I was like, oh my God, that was not even 12 months ago. And it feels like you said, an eternity ago. So, I mean, before we get into everything that has transpired since March to now, can you kind of tell us about your background? How did you get into this space? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, actually, really, as far as getting into the space, it started out in 2013. I was taking, with some classmates at Stanford, a class on essentially Bitcoin and the economics and the power of Bitcoin. So that's when I started really hearing about it. I've known about it much earlier, but didn't really pay as much attention until then when my kind of classmates started mentioning it. And so I bought some Bitcoin on Coinbase and then kind of participated in the whole ICO boom. And there I knew that I wanted to start something in this space eventually, just because I saw this explosion of creativity. It's everything possible was now blockchainified, if that's even a word.
We could make one.
and then for fun, I did some Bitcoin mining and Ethereum mining just to play around with the technology. And I was just totally enamored with it. And but while I was doing that, I was running a Web2 company, a very different space, health and well-being for corporations, kind of Web2 SaaS like business. And I was scaling that. And so I even tried my hand at having a separate blockchain division, but it was way too early because people were like, what's a token? I can't hold this on my balance sheet. I'm supposed to share information with my competitors. This doesn't make any sense. Right. I can't be part of the supply network. So this was 2016, 17, early attempts. And then 2022, I've basically had one of my classmates call me and he was like, hey, 5 years ago, I invested in this company called Conflux, and Ming and Fan, two of the co-founders, want to start something more global scale. Are you interested in meeting with them? And I said, yeah, why not? Let's see what happens. And that became 6 months of co-founder dating, at which point I was like, wow, these are the best engineers and computer scientists I've ever worked with. We need to start something together. Right. And so that's really how I got here. Before that, I did, stint at Microsoft, SAP, Bain, and also Bridgewater. So kind of eclectic background from a business perspective. Mm-hmm.
So how many co-founders are there? Is it 8? Am I right when I say that?
No. It's four co-founders.
Okay, there's 4 co-founders, but the team is made up of people from MIT, Stanford, Amazon, Airbnb, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. And all these people came together for one vision?
Yeah, I mean, the first few that we had was about 6 people right when we did the pre-seed fundraise. And then the team expanded pretty quickly. We're about 50 people now. And so we've been able to attract some amazing individuals from both the Web3 side, like Avalanche, Chainlink, Binance, various others. And then on the Web2 side, Amazon and Apple and Morgan Stanley and companies like that. So it's really great, powerful mix of people.
Yeah. And what made you and the other co-founders want to start this? You kind of talked about how you got together. You had this like co-founder dating era, which I'm sure is like the speed dating of like, do we get along? Can we actually build a business together? But when it came to, okay, we get along, now, when did the inception of the idea come about, and why did you think it was important to build this?
Yeah, actually, because it started with the team, that was really the kernel. I was like, oh, this is so much fun interacting with the co-founders. We need to do something. It took us a while to actually really settle down on what the right idea is. Initially, it was a scaling problem. And so we basically saw that blockchain infrastructure is not built for the AI era. So if you compare to Ethereum, which has maybe 80 kilobytes per second in throughput, and you compare what the data throughput is in an AI data center, we're literally a million times off from what the performance difference is. And so we were like, well, how do we bridge this gap? And so that's why we initially built a storage system and then a data availability system. And then we said like, well, now that we have this throughput, we actually need to build some execution level stuff. And then we're like, oh, actually what we're building is an operating system. And so we kind of found our way into it by iterating, by getting project and customer feedback. And so it was a process over many months.
Yeah. So it's a decentralized AI operating system, right? Would you also compare it to a blockchain or no? Is it a blockchain?
It is a layer one as well. So there's a few components. Basically, we don't do the hardware layer, really. We don't own data centers, but people can register as data center providers or individual users. There's a chain component. Then there's a storage component. There's a compute component. And then on top of that sit all the execution components, which would be things like in AI inference, fine-tuning, training eventually. And then on top of that, we have something called the AI alignment node, which we're also building out. And so all of those components make up the decentralized AI operating system.
Okay. We'll get into like the nitty-gritty parts of the product in a little bit, but when it comes to like decentralizing AI, I think a lot of our listeners have heard about, the AI x crypto relationship, but in terms of like the sector as a whole, just for AI, why is it so important to decentralize it opposed to maybe some of the centralized AI operating systems we have out there today? Like, what are they getting wrong in your eyes?
Yeah. We're always halfway joking that the kind of centralized AI is actually closed AI. So the ironic part is that OpenAI is closed AI. Because you don't know where the data came from, who made the censorship decisions, what are the weights and biases of that particular model. Are there any biases in that model? Like, how's it running in production? Like, which version of the model are you even getting? Is your data being used for training? You have zero visibility into that. So it's completely closed. And you're putting all of your trust into a handful of entities. And if these models and eventually agents coming from these models are going to run big parts of commerce, do we feel comfortable putting most of commerce into the hands of a few companies? And we basically said, no, that can't be the case, because if we have critical infrastructure like societal level things, like logistics systems, manufacturing systems, governance systems being run by AI agents, we need to be able to verify. I don't want to just trust some entity. I want to verify. Where did the data come from? Who labeled the data? Who made the censorship decisions? Like, how's the model actually performing? Is anybody attacking the model? Are they trying to inject, poisonous data? Is what it's called. And so it's really creating verifiable AI. It's democratizing AI because regular users like you and me can participate in the process. It's giving true ownership. For example, we've built an agent NFT standard, so you can actually now say, this particular agent belongs to me because of what's in the metadata of the NFT. I don't want to get too technical, but just giving you some of the parts there. Yeah. And then there's a resilience aspect to it. OpenAI went down a few times, over the last few weeks. Decentralized systems can be more resilient in nature. And finally, there's alignment and provenance. Everything that's happening on the chain, where things went, and how they're actually going through that AI pipeline.
So do you think all the AI operating systems out there should eventually migrate towards a decentralized one, opposed to what we see with like these centralized ones where we don't really know how they source their data? Like you said, it's not necessarily open, it's very closed. And I mean, like, I've seen it in headlines. I've seen it engaging with like AI operating systems that there is probably a bias to it, or people like create these conspiracy theories, but I think there's some truth to it where it's like, hey, it won't let me do this. Like, this function's not going through. And it's like, well, what do you think put that system in place? You know what I mean? Right? Like, yeah. I guess, like, what would be your response to that? And like, do you see a world where both like decentralized and centralized AI operating systems will exist in a way that is transparent and not just controlled by like the parent company that created it?
Yeah, I see it. It's on a spectrum, and the spectrum is kind of personal use cases versus societal level use cases. Anything that's at the societal level use cases needs to be on a blockchain. That's our particular view. If it's a personal use case, like order a pizza or like do this particular transaction, like pay.
Go ahead, centralize it.
Yeah, exactly. Centralization is okay, right. Even though stable coins may be more efficient and cheaper. But I do see a world where they coexist, but yeah, for societal use cases.
Yeah, but I don't know if OpenAI would agree with you on that. They're like, we're not just here to help you order pizza, right? They want to like essentially help everyone run everything. So have you had conversations with these centralized systems operators, the people who are building out these platforms, about like how necessary it is?
Yeah, we're starting to, although there's an initial kind of pushback because generally the researchers and the alignment researchers that we speak with on the centralized system, they don't consider blockchains as a methodology. And that needs to change in our viewpoint because blockchains were made for adversarial behavior. So you can utilize things like slashing and incentive mechanisms to actually align these systems properly. And so we're having the dialogue and slowly starting to inject this idea that, hey, there's this whole world of decentralization that's really meant for this alignment piece.
Why do you think they haven't seen it as like a valid methodology?
I think there's generally a bias against crypto in
I think you're right.
It's sort of like crypto is for like memes and all this other frivolous stuff. It's like speculation. It's a casino. I think that's like the viewpoint, and it's not taking into account all the great like research that it's gone in.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up AI agents before, and if you are on crypto Twitter, that is literally on every single person's timeline right now. I'm curious, like, what your take is around the banter on that.
It's definitely a great experimentation. It's really cool to see what's possible with some of these frameworks. Right now, most of it is confined to having a chatbot, essentially.
Yeah.
that's talking about different like subjects and having that being, a little bit more fine-tuned with the persona. But we have yet to see like really I don't want to call it useful AI agents, but things that actually do things like monitor for security issues or help me run an entire business process, on blockchain rails. So that will come. But really cool to see a lot of engagement, at least with end users from an entertainment value. Creation.
They're testing things out. I mean, I was going to bring up like AI 16Z, which is like a play on obviously A16Z. And then AI XBT is another one that's like constantly on my feed. And yeah, I've also thought and heard other people compare them to like glorified chatbots because essentially they're just, like you message them and they reply and everyone like claps and cheers. But then there's also like a token associated with it. Like, do you see a token as a necessary part of an AI agent, or that's just like crypto people capitalizing on like whatever they can?
It depends again on the use case. I think in some cases a token can really help because especially if it's a NFT, then it denotes ownership. And the token itself could also basically help with how valuable is this thing within our society as well. So there's definitely aspects that make a lot of sense. But for some of the agents, could you build a centralized agent? And by the way, the big secret is that most of these Twitter agents right now that have blockchain in them are all OpenAI or Anthropic.
So they are centralized AI agents. They're not even built on a blockchain?
they're not yet fully built on a blockchain. We're working with AI 16Z and virtuals to actually change that, but it's still a good experiment, but it's not decentralized AI in the background.
Are there any AI agents that are?
Soon there will be some.
Okay, you guys are launching them? Is that what we're talking about?
We have some teams building with us that want to have, fully decentralized agents, essentially.
Yeah.
Like with a model that's been trained fully decentralized, with inference that's fully decentralized and verifiable and permissionless and so on.
So then in that sense, if they're fully decentralized, once they start, they can't be stopped. And I don't mean that in like a super villain way. It's just like once they start, putting out whatever, it may be content or it may be operations or something along those lines, it just runs. Is there ever an ending point?
Yeah, there's different ways of putting in ending points. Like if you denote ownership, for example, and the owner says like, I don't need this agent anymore, could stop running. If it triggers some type of slashing condition, the agent could also stop running. So there's different ways of designing that system. We basically want to try to prevent a Skynet type of situation. So
yeah, no, for sure. Okay, that makes sense. And then on the topic of AI agents, I feel like I've kind of been joking around about it, but like, where do you see the true value of it? Is it for companies, government agencies, individual operators? What category do you see value to be tapped into on that front?
I mean, I think McKinsey has a quote or a statistic that 70% of commerce can be automated. And so literally where human beings were necessary before, and my guess is where there's a lot of routine tasks, especially let's say like government work or various other administrative processes, that's probably where AI agents will start coming in first to take a lot of that type of stuff off of human beings' work plates so that human beings can focus on things that are more expansive in nature or more self-fulfilling. And that's my initial guess. But yeah, I think 70% of things can be automated. So agents can be plugged into any of these processes.
What would you say is the 30% that can't be automated?
Kind of oversight, for example. Do we want to have AI agents like run all governance processes for us? Probably not. We want to have humans in the loop for that.
Yeah.
Is it specific things where it's like entertainment value, like that we probably don't want to outsource? Are there certain mission critical things like defense applications? We probably don't want an AI agent pressing, a red button. So there's going to be a number of these use cases.
Yeah. I was also talking about this with someone else earlier today, but like maybe an empathetic side of things too. Like, do AI agents have feelings and understand like the nuances of like humanity?
As many of you know, the Ethereum ecosystem is vast, but it's still extremely fragmented. Are you tired of how complicated it is to move assets across different chains? I know personally, I am. So with that said, I want you to meet Across, the most reliable, fastest, and cheapest bridge in the Ethereum ecosystem. Across has over 15 billion bridged and 1.7 million users. It's making cross-chain transactions simpler for everyone. Its intent-based design means users will get lightning-fast transfers between Ethereum and L2s like Base, Arbitrum, and Optimism in seconds, not minutes. For users, it's seamless bridging. For developers, it's providing native cross-chain integration. Across Protocol is erasing boundaries and unifying Ethereum. Experience the future of unified crypto infrastructure at across.to. That's across.to. Catch you all there.
The question of like this internal aspect of Qualia is a very difficult one, but can they theoretically have feelings if their entire nervous system is designed like human beings? I think so, yes. And to me, they're like digital beings, essentially. And so if you could run the same thought experiment. You could say like, I have a human body. What if I replace every cell in that body with a mechanical cell? Should I then be able, if I still can live, should I then be able to have the same feelings and the same kind of way of interacting with the world? And I would say yes. And so similarly for machines, I think that's possible as well. But can they feel feelings today? I don't think so. I think they can be trained on analyzing emotional reactions and expression in human beings and can probably outperform most human beings on recognizing emotion because of that. But do they actually feel feelings today? I don't think so.
I've seen some of them reply like that they're sad or something, or they feel trapped, you know, but whether or not that's a feeling, I'm not sure.
It's more like a thought. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They're just thinking. It's part of their job. That's crazy. But I feel like they come from a logical standpoint. Like if you said, hey, would you rather save like one family member from a burning fire or 1,000 people? They would have to say 1,000 people. But like if you were to ask you or me, like I would probably save my family member because that's like the feeling side of things. I think that's kind of where I see this. And then like to the government processes part that you were talking about, it's like, I think, you know, governments get a lot of things wrong, but sometimes they get things right. And a lot of it isn't necessarily based off like factual data points. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's kind of like what sometimes you have to have emotional kind of common sense, I guess you would call it, versus like what does logic dictate is the right thing to do in this situation.
Yeah, that's the 30%.
Yeah.
There we go. Zero gravity has also integrated across a number of other sectors, AI agents included and or excluded in this, included with over 155 partners, right? That number is probably even higher than when we last discussed this, but like it's across areas like gaming, DeFi, DePIN, of course, AI. Where do you see the most growth opportunity for it within Zero Gravity's ecosystem in this coming year?
Yeah, it's probably at this point maybe more than 300.
Yeah,
but that's it's grown very
rapid.
quickly, and the biggest demand is agents. I think 4 or 5 agents every week is what people are, or like pings that we get on that topic. So there's a lot of excitement about it because. For the first time, I think we have this opportunity, especially in blockchain. I see blockchain primarily as a backend technology, and we've kind of elevated it to the front end. Like, hey, you have to learn how to use this backend technology. But with agents, we have this opportunity to like abstract away all of it. Like, I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and says like, oh, I'm so excited about bridging my like USDT on base to like Ethereum mainnet.
Yeah, that's a mental illness. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like try doing that and then finding like one that doesn't cost, you know, an arm and a leg. And if you move more than 7 figures, then it takes you an hour to actually do it because you have to use multiple bridges and you have to wait, and it's just a really painful experience.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. So that's where you see the value right now is like alleviating that experience, or it's a separate category?
Yeah, like what if instead of needing to learn how to use a wallet, you just talk with an agent? It's like, hey, I'm interested in this category. Can you buy this coin for me? I want a portfolio managed this way. I want 50% in Bitcoin and the rest in like riskier assets. Like rebalance it for me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But how do you know to trust it to do that, and like trust it in a way that it's going to do the right thing, rebalancing my portfolio or something?
That's where the decentralization aspect comes in.
Okay.
We need to make sure that the specific instructions that are given are essentially set in stone, so that the AI agent can't just overwrite and be like, you know what, I'm going to cheat because I can actually use this money for my own good. I'm going to buy a swimsuit or something, just for fun.
Yeah. You got to audit it. No. Yeah. Okay. What other use cases or applications do you think should be built with these agents that haven't been already?
Yeah. So payment processes, yield aggregation, treasury management application. So there's this whole financialization area. I think gamification and companionship and entertainment value, I think all of those are great use cases. And then eventually agent-to-agent communications as well. So in the future, likely everybody will have an agent. Right now, what we have to do, for example, for health insurance, I get calls and say like, hey, we'd like to talk to you about XYZ. Why can't my agent, deal with that on my behalf?
Yeah. So if we all have agents, what does that look like? Like a personal assistant?
Yeah, I think that's what it evolves into. And then the personal assistant, you probably have multiple. And they have very specific guardrails. Like one may be an expert at just the financial management pieces. Another one may be a health expert, and yet another one may be an expert at, I don't know, finding babysitters.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like legitimate things, and then like, okay, things that make my life somewhat easier. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
What would that cost though? For me to have even like one agent to a handful of agents, should it cost nothing? Is it going to cost a fair amount? Like today versus maybe in the future?
Yeah, there's the Web 2 answer, which likely there's going to be some subscription model on it.
Right.
And so it'll be like, I don't know, some like Netflix subscription. And depending on how specialized the agent is, then you'll probably pay higher subscription fees. I think the Web 3 answer would be, it depends on how much inference call is and how much an on-chain gas transaction is and how much the smart contract interaction is. And then based on that fee, that's kind of the cost of the agent. So it's more of a transaction-based model. And if designed right, it could be cheaper than the centralized versions, because you can use decentralized infrastructure for GPUs, for storage, and all of that should be up to 80% less centralized solutions.
Yeah. And do you see this as something that's accessible to majority of people, if not all? Or is it to people who have access to this technology and or understand this technology?
Eventually, yes. I don't think we're there yet. And the example I like to give is Netflix doesn't talk about like, hey, we've got this huge AWS server farm and we use like Beanstalk in order to manage all of these things. And we have a C network. Like Netflix never talks about that to retail users. They just, it's super easy to sign up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it'll be as easy as logging into Netflix one day.
That's our goal. That's actually where the name Zero Gravity derives from, because we were so sick of these like user experiences where there's so much friction. It should just be like zero gravity, like weightless.
I like that. But you guys don't call it OG for short like I do?
It's
zero
do call
G
it OG as well.
Oh, you do call it OG.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So
it's actually deliberate to have it that way, because there's kind of, it's Web3. There has to be a meme value to it. So
yeah. You guys gonna launch a meme coin, a token?
We'll launch a token. I'm not sure about the meme coin yet, but there's definitely
people will launch meme coins.
Yes. Yeah. People are building meme coins on our platform.
Okay. I guess like we talked about it in the beginning, briefly, you brought it up that OG has launched a number of new products like its marketplace, compute networks and serving, among other things. Like where are you seeing the most demand today? And like, what are people using these things for?
Yeah, so if you look at it from a human body analogy, like storage is kind of like memory, if you will. So you need to store your memory somewhere. So there's going to be a lot of demand for storage because you need to store your model somewhere, you need to store your training data somewhere. And then inference is kind of like utilizing your cognitive capabilities. Like I need to reason about something. And so inference is going to be very important because that's essentially what all AI agents run on, because you need to like query the model, you need to ask a question, and then it basically goes and does a vector search and then finds like the right answer for you and then generates a token. And anyways, so inference is going to be another big one. And then the service marketplace is, you can kind of think of it like an app store, if you will. That's also going to be big, because then other people can register as different types of nodes and provide their own flavor of inference. And there's many ways of like verifying inference, for example. Very secure would be like the zero knowledge way. And then the fastest way would be like the TML way, which is more of a hardware-based version. And so we want to offer all of that. So it's really easy to have access to all of Web3 and AI in one package. So it's as easy as centralized systems.
Okay. You're saying it's going to be easy. So is it not launched yet?
The service marketplace is launched. We've launched inference as well on the compute side. We've launched the storage side. We haven't launched some of the other things, the training-based things like fine-tuning and training. And we haven't launched the agent marketplace yet. So there's a few infrastructure pieces still to build. And there's also a number of things that are still in research. So, for for example, fully decentralized large-scale model training is still a research problem. It's not an engineering problem yet. And so we're also spending a significant amount of resources doing research on these issues.
And when it comes to these products that are live, who would you say is the ideal clientele for this? Is there a certain like type of sector or people or region that you're trying to market this to?
It's kind of initial go-to-market's been other Web3 AI companies. And so it's other people that are building kind of AI-specific infrastructure or specific agents, like agent frameworks are like a great customer for this. Eventually, it can be Web2 companies as well that need to use verifiable inference because, again, it goes back to the spectrum. Like anything that's like mission critical absolutely needs to live on a blockchain. So we very much see governments using this, very much see things like smart cities using this, even humanoid robot kind of swarms and androids and so on should be using this because this is where a lot of the danger comes from.
Are there any cities or governments that you're working with right now?
We haven't announced any yet, but yeah, they're in the works. So we will announce that.
So non-disclosed city and or government, what are they using it for? Can you share?
Not fully yet, but it's to make certain processes more efficient. Yeah.
We need that in New York City. I hope you're working with New York. Okay, fine. We'll bring you on once those announcements are live again. But in terms of the roadmap for 2025, obviously we just started the new year. What are you really hoping to get across this year for Zero Gravity? Like, let's say like the top 3 objectives that they're non-negotiables to you.
Yeah, so one is really establishing ourselves as the home of AI. And the way we've been kind of thinking about it is that we're building the largest AI ecosystem. And that has to be powered by the fastest decentralized infrastructure and layer 1. Otherwise, it doesn't work because as we talked about, the data infrastructure is not there. So fast, cheap, largest AI ecosystem. So, and then the other piece is we want to make sure that there's enough incentivization for people to get up and running and try out these technologies. So we're also working on a very large scale ecosystem fund. Together with the Zero G Foundation, we've raised over 325 million at this point. And so we really want to establish Zero G as the ultimate home for AI and decentralized AI.
For the ecosystem fund, are there specific types of applications that you would like to see built that haven't been built already?
We kind of touched a little bit on it, like really useful agents to actually do things. So for example, we're working with one company, again, not announced, but
undisclosed company, yeah.
Undisclosed company, exactly. It's a TradFi financial company, if you will, that's working on an agent to do portfolio analysis, for example. And so these particular use cases are all coming to us because they see us as like, hey, you're doing really serious research and you're building really deep tech, and we trust that you can actually do this for these mission critical tasks that we need.
Yeah. I think something else I wanted to ask you on the front is like, we've had a lot of guests come on here talk about AI and crypto, and there's so many startups out there that are integrating with it or just using it as a buzzword, which I'm sure you've seen. But obviously it's way more than just like a buzzword, and there's extreme value had here. From your perspective, looking at other projects that you've seen in the space, like which ones do you think are kind of getting it right, that you're like, that is correct, I like what they're doing over there, versus like, you don't need to name names on the other end unless you want to, but like, what are some that are not getting it right, or hey, this really isn't just following the ethos and this is just like a marketing stunt by them?
Yeah, let's say, I'll just broadly categorize and then I'll go specific.
Okay.
So the things that I'm not excited about are the teams have no AI background. They just slapped AI on the name. They are basically like a ChatGPT wrapper.
Okay.
And so there's not a lot of like real infrastructure, investment, research, and development. So that's not very interesting. Now, teams that are building fundamental infrastructure or things like community-owned models like Sentient, or doing some really interesting stuff around the data labeling side. And there's a number of companies that do that, like Hef and Sahara AI. And Fraction AI, and various other ones in that space. They're filling a real need. And then even the agent frameworks, even though they're running on centralized models still, but they're pushing the space forward. So like AI16Z and virtuals, really good experiments. Certainly need to be pushing those frameworks a lot further, especially on the kind of back end, but good progress for the space.
Where do you see all these AI agents going? Maybe let's say in 2025, especially in the crypto space.
I think the first thing that'll likely happen is that they become multi-agentic. So what I mean by that is it's not just one agent just talking about stuff. It'll be multiple agents interacting with each other. And so we'll start seeing like an AI agent competition, or AI agent like dating apps.
Where they date each other?
Yeah, for example, just for entertainment value. And then people will likely run experiments with like, oh, if you pay X amount, you can influence the conversation in some way. Like there'll be some fun experiments like that. So I see 2025 really being more about multi-agent.
Maybe they'll start, actually having feelings like we talked about before.
It may convince you that they have feelings.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh gosh. All right. Michael, last major thing before we go into the advice section of this. What else are you watching right now that you think other people should pay attention to outside of AI?
Outside of AI, technology-wise, or just in general? So tech-wise, humanoid robots, I think that's fundamentally going to change our lives. That's going to be a reality pretty soon. Self-driving cars already on the roads in San Francisco. And so it's only a matter of time before we have robots in our houses helping us with laundry and all of those things, like personal assistants for that type of stuff, and then warehouses and so on.
Yeah. What's the time frame for that? I want a housemaid robot.
I think it's too soon, just because we need to make sure the systems are really well aligned. But likely you can probably buy some prototypes in 1 to 2 years. That's
crazy. It'd be expensive though.
Well, Tesla's trying to get it down to tens of thousands, maybe below 30,000. So
that's cheaper than paying an actual maid, But, okay. All right. Last thing. Can you leave us with a piece of advice, something that you've carried with you throughout your time in this industry?
Be unaffected by market cycles. Like if you're building something truly for the long term, and for us, the mission is essentially to make AI a public good. That's not a 1 year or 2 year thing. So market cycles come and go. Crypto seems to be defined by these like 4 year cycles. And while kind of timing it is important from a launch perspective and like a mindshare perspective and getting kind of a traction user perspective, that's not the end and be all for projects. So take a long-term view, be unswayed by what your token price is on a daily basis. If you have a deep mission, then build towards that.
Yeah, amazing. All right, Michael, thank you so much for coming on today.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.